Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Spirit Side. I'm your host, Paul James Caden. Before we launch into today's show, I just want to extend my apologies for not having a show out on Monday. I usually like to record a show a day or two in advance, and I just got caught up in a lot over the weekend, and I didn't have time to hook up the mic and record an episode, but hey, sometimes these things happen. So here we are. It's Wednesday. We're getting back on track. And, I wanted to do one of these podcasts that are more conversational, kind of gathering around the living room and just having, bantering with one another. I had a few ideas for this show before I recorded, but one of the things that really kept popping out at me and up, on social media and, everywhere online, made me change the subject matter. And what keeps coming up is a lot of people feeling that something bad is in the air. Almost like the apocalypse is soon approaching. And some people are afraid. Some people strangely welcome it because they say, hey, you know what? I've had enough of this world. I've had enough of the crooked governments. I've had enough of the way people act. I'm tired of the way things are going. I'm ready for all this to come to an end and move on to whatever comes next. So whether that is, wrong or right or a healthy mindset, I suppose that's up to each individual to decide for themselves. I've certainly seen a lot of changes in the world during just my lifetime, and I'm not all that super old. I mean, I'm, going to be 53 on February 14th. And, I've seen a lot of changes, happen in the world that are really stark, really make you stand back and go, wow, it's almost like we're living in a different reality. What happened? What happened to our country? What happened to society? What's happening to the planet? And I think the thing that really kind of put me over the edge with this topic is that I went on YouTube this morning and someone had left a comment under one of the videos that I posted there. I think maybe it was last week or a week before last. And someone listens to the podcast there, and they shared a link under one of my videos for another YouTube channel that has a website. And there's a man and a woman, and they talk about this cyclical cataclysm that comes, into our world or happens to the planet every so often. It's happened in the past. It's going to happen soon to planet Earth now, and it will happen again in the future. Now, I'm not a stranger to the cyclical cataclysm theory. I actually read about it, probably about 10 or 11 years ago. I was reading some information on this and actually read a couple of books about it. And again, this was kind of the inception of the cyclical cataclysm. Some people say, well, it has to do with the planets and the sun and the changes that the earth goes through. Some people say that it's an every so often thing that happens when societies get too big. They start damaging the earth, and the earth has to cleanse itself, almost like getting rid of parasites that are, destroying the planet. And there are some people who say that these things happen because mankind is led through this process of delusion and deception by evil entities. And who those entities are varies. Some people say our leaders, our presidents, our kings, our politicians, since day one, since before recorded history, are not actually human beings, but there's something else in the guise of human beings. Some say they're fallen angels. Some say that they're aliens or reptilians or some kind of interdimensional beings that have always tried to enslave man and the planet. Some people say that those forces are controlling our destiny and our history and everything that happens in our world, but they're doing it more remotely. They're kind of out there, although they do interact with mankind at different times in different ways. So there's a lot of ideas about this cyclical cataclysm. I can't claim to know everything about it, but I know right now in the realm of the truth community and the conspiracy theory folks, a lot of people are talking about this. The sun is going through this grand solar minimum, and the planets are going to align on this particular day, and they haven't done so in 3,000 years or whatever it is. And all these super moons and blood moons, they're all signs of the cosmic cataclysm that's about to befall us once again. Some people say that this is kind of like the wrath of God, almost like the creator of the universe set this in motion so that every so often there would be a cataclysm, and the good people would survive it or be taken somewhere else. The bad people would perish, and then the few survivors would start over again on planet Earth. So there's, depending who you listen to, there are variations in, what the whole cyclical cataclysm is about. But nonetheless, I mean, the big thing is everybody seems to think we're on the edge, we're on the verge of something. Something's going to happen. Now, I don't fully disagree with that, because I have to say, anybody that's listened to this podcast for any period of time knows the kind of work that I do. And I've always been a very sensitive person, where I can meet someone, I could just get that vibe. Are they a good person? Are they a bad person? Are they hiding something? Do they like me? Do they take an automatic dislike to me? Are they guarded around me for some reason? I can walk into a room, walk into a place and say, I'm really not too keen on this. I think I'm going to leave. Some people would say that's being sensitive to energy, or the energy of other people or places. But I've felt for a while now, and my mother was that way. She could look at someone and tell you exactly what kind of person they were. Like, man, this person is trouble. Stay away from that person. Or, this person is a good person. She was very sensitive. And I think that's where I got it from, because there were different members of my family that were how would you say it, sensitives. They could sense things, they would know things, they would dream dreams that would come true. Now that might sound hocus pocus to some people, but until you live it, until you experience it, until you delve into, some of the actual studies about these things, you're really not going to understand that this is a reality. On my other show with my co-host, Stan Wanglin, The People Under the Stairs, we've talked at length. He's a trained psychologist. And when he went to St. John's University, they had very prominent professors and people, who would give lectures and conduct seminars on ESP and psychic development or psychic phenomenon. Our military for years has looked for ways, that some call it the psychic spy program, remote viewing, out-of-body experiences to spy on the enemy. And there is some success in those programs, that they know it's real, that there's something with the mind that we haven't quite tapped into yet. And there's probably a good reason for that, because I think we would abuse the hell out of it if we had all the capabilities of our mind opened all at once. If we think the world is a mess right now, imagine what it would be like if people could do strange psychic paranormal feats by just the power of thought, the power of mind. But nonetheless, I digress a little bit. That talking about picking up on the energy of people, the energy of a place. And I'd be lying if I didn't say I feel what other people are feeling, especially over the last, I would say, 5 years. I mean, it's been longer than that, but it's really increased over the last 5 years. And now it just seems, how much further can we go before we go over the edge? But what I feel, and I tell my wife this, that you can tune into a person, but then you can also tune into the world energy, the energy of society. And it feels very uncomfortable to me. I think something is drastically wrong. I think half what we see on the media, we don't even get the whole story. I mean, there's things that happen in our world that they don't even report on. So it's not good. It's definitely not good out there. And, I think the result of all of this is, what we're seeing, the earthquakes, the new diseases, the coronavirus, call me crazy, but I think I agree with the Buddhist point of view that life responds to the energy and the thought and the actions that you put into it. And if that energy, thought, and actions is negative, if it's greedy, if it's violence, if it's overly materialistic, hateful, that the environment will begin to respond to that. It's almost like we're rotting out our own world from the inside out. Although some say that it's from the outside in, it's an inside job. Some people say that, with the cyclical cataclysm, and all the weird things that, what we say are UFOs are, these plasma balls in the sky, and with the planets and the sun and, this and that it all has an effect on human beings because we are spiritual beings, electro, we have the whole electronic makeup, in our body. And if that's disrupted, we'll start to act strangely. We will feel strange. And some people say that's why people are acting so insane in the world today, because, our whole biosystem is being disrupted by these changes as this cataclysm approaches. But either way you slice it, things are not good, and I totally get what people are talking about. Something's in the air, you hear people say. But now, the interesting part to me, if there is some force or forces, whether they be spiritual or universal, happening with the planets and the sun and the electromagnetic field of the earth, if there's something of that nature that's causing people to act strangely, act erratically, then why isn't it all people? Why are there little pockets of people here and there that are outside of all that, kind of observing and saying, what the hell are they doing? What's going on here? And these people feel more, I guess, more in touch with themselves, more in touch with what's happening. Some try to help and make a difference, but nobody wants to listen. So why not everybody? If it's disrupting our whole biosystem, why isn't everyone breaking down, psychologically, mentally, physically? And now there's an interesting question in all that. And that is, are there certain people that things like that will affect and other people that it will not? If you want to look at some of the scriptures and holy books that we have, the Bible speaks of, a time when there's going to be these changes, earthquakes, storms, famines, disease, pestilence, people behaving terribly toward one another. Violence, the whole earth being filled with violence and hatred and greed, people that will even hate the concept of God or a higher power in the universe. But then it says that there will be that few who are the true believers or true seekers of the truth, who will be preserved. And it may be hard to get through those times because of all the mess going on in the world, and some people may end up, unfortunately, losing their lives. But the main premise of the Bible narrative is that, let's just call it the darkness. The darkness affects only those people who allow it to affect them. But those whose hearts are guarded, and they truly follow the way of faith and of love and of righteousness, it doesn't move them. It doesn't cause the same reaction or breakdown in their psychological, mental, spiritual systems. It's also interesting to note that in the Quran, it speaks about almost this cyclical cataclysm, and that it speaks about civilizations before us, some that we know of, some that we know not of, because they were so long ago, they're not even in our recorded history. And there seems to be this cycle that every civilization goes through. And that is, it starts out with good intentions, but then eventually the people become divided politically, spiritually. They get greedy, they get violent, they become immoral, they start doing terrible things to one another, and more they start to drift away from God, from sound moral principles and ethics. And the Quran says that there's just always those few that are left. There's always that few that are left that are preserved. But eventually the end of that civilization comes because of their own actions. And it's very interesting to look into this in the original Arabic, because it talks about it's like a disease in people's hearts. And through their own choice, through their own actions, through their own decisions, getting farther and farther away from what is good, from what is light, that man increases that disease within himself until he becomes almost like a beast, like a ravenous animal. He's not even human in the way that he acts and reasons anymore. And man, that sounds an awful lot like the world we live in right now. You don't have to look far to say, find people that, you're wondering, what are they thinking? What are they doing? Is this even real? But the Quran speaks of this kind of thing that, happens and it happens and it happens. And, some of these civilizations, they were destroyed by volcanoes, others floods, others earthquakes, others great storms, some by great waves of the sea that came and swept them away, all kind of different things. Some, kind of the fire from heaven, alluding to, maybe some kind of meteor storm or something that falls from the heavens and, destroys them in judgment, I suppose. But the Quran goes on to say that, this is something that has happened and will continue to happen because this is the cycle of man. And eventually that moment will come where it will happen once for all, and that will be the day of judgment. The final time when, there's no more chances. The cycle is over with, or these cycles that we go through. There's one last time for humanity, and it's done. And of course, the bad people at that point are separated, from God, or, some scholars in Christianity, Islam, believe hell is just non-existence. That person does not have consciousness anymore. They don't go on to have any future life or lives, anywhere. But the Quran is also interesting because it says before that moment comes, the righteous people or the good people are always warned and preserved. And, we use the example of Sodom and Gomorrah because that story is also in the Quran, that the people were very unrighteous. They were doing, very terrible things. The angels went in. They had Lot and his family and other people. It's interesting to note that the Bible just said it was Lot and his family that were brought out of, Sodom and Gomorrah before the judgment. Everyone else died. The Quran says it was Lot, some of his family, not all of them, because some wanted to stay behind. And there were other people from the cities and towns. It doesn't say how many, but there were other people who were righteous and of goodwill, and, they were warned. And with Lot and his family, they were gathered and led out of Sodom and Gomorrah. And then, the judgment came, the fall of that, particular city. And these are all parables. It says in the Quran that these things are parables that we're to think on and learn and grow in wisdom. And I think the idea there is that this is something that's cyclical. There's going to come a point where it's going to happen, one big last hurrah, and that's kind of all she wrote. But those who don't give into that mindset, that disease, that deterioration of, their mental, spiritual, and psychological faculties, these will be the people who will survive. They will be, preserved. They are not to partake in this cataclysm that comes upon the earth. So I find that very interesting, because I was just reading some of these things in the Quran, and then I keep bumping into this cyclical cataclysm idea online through different people. And I just wanted to make the podcast where, again, we sit down, we kind of converse about this. We see hints of it in many of the scriptures. A lot of people, more than ever before, it seems to me, there used to be the old religious cries of Armageddon. The Lord was always coming. The rapture was coming. Jesus was going to return on May 15th, 1978, or whatever the case may be. But it's different now. And it's people who are more level-headed and not necessarily religious or belong to a religion, even though they might be spiritual. And these people are saying, man, I feel like something's wrong. I feel like something's going to happen. And maybe that's what's going to happen. The Quran speaks of before the cataclysm's approach, that there is always a warner, someone who goes forward and warns the people that this is going to happen, a messenger, if you will. And there are some scholars who say that messenger could be a physical person or group of people who are pointing to the signs and saying, look at what's happening. Something bad is coming. Get right with God. Get your life straight. Stop doing what you're doing. But then there are some scholars who say that messenger could be within us. Our own conscience, our own intuition, something that stirs within our own hearts that says, something's wrong. I better separate myself from this group, or what's happening, or how everybody else is acting. And sometimes that intuition may be, I better leave this country or this land or this geographical location that I'm currently at. So it could be either or. Could be a physical messenger. It could be something inside of us. So it is, and I'm just speculating here. I'm not saying that this is so, but that's what makes conversations like this interesting, to bat around ideas. Is this feeling that people are getting something's wrong, something's going to happen, something isn't right? Is that the messenger? Is it convicting people within, alerting them and warning them something isn't right, something is brewing over the horizon? So I've always been a big advocate that listen to your intuition. Don't be one of these people that gets into fear and conspiracy and the end is coming, and, you start acting fanatical and nuts and, doing all these radical things. As much as people say that that kind of thing is promoted in the Quran, it actually isn't. And it really does speak of people, living their lives, doing their work, taking care of their family, being decent to one another, but also heeding the signs when they come and being conscious of God, who may speak to us through nature, through signs in nature, through signs in the cosmos, through another person, through our own inner guidance, if that's how he chooses to speak with us. So always be conscious, always be open. I mean, that's my take on it anyway. Is the final big implosion of mankind and planet Earth on its way? Is this the big one? It makes a body wonder, because with technology and the modern world and the way we're living, the way we're doing things, it really does seem that a lot of things are coming unraveled out there in our world. And, I think we definitely need to heed the signs, whether they be of the cosmos, other people, nature. We're just getting a strong intuition about something. I think we need to pay attention to all those things, because something is definitely not right in our world. And is it something that can be changed? As some Buddhists and Sufis, which are the mystical Muslims, say that, hey, change your behavior, change what you're doing, change your destiny, change the trajectory that you're on, change what's going to happen that might be bad to bypass you. So that might be possible. I guess we wouldn't know unless we had the state of mind, the presence of mind to try. But it seems like a lot of people don't want to try. They just want to keep going with the hate and the greed and just this ugly, nasty, energy and attitude that so many people have. Are they increasing their own disease within? Becoming haters of their fellow man? Haters of God? Turning from what is good? Denying what is good and right? I suppose only time will tell. But for those of us with eyes to see and ears to hear, keep your eyes and ears open. Be open-minded. Don't be dogmatic, fanatical, or weird about these things. But I think, certainly certainly know that things are not right on good old terra firma. And who knows what's next? Maybe all of us who are sitting here right now going, yeah, I feel like something is wrong in the world. Maybe we will be the messengers. Maybe this podcast is a message to somebody. Maybe all of us who are seeing that something is very wrong in our world, we'll be the ones who will eventually step outside of our front doors and say, you know what, everybody? I think you better stop. Because bad times are coming, and if you don't listen, if you don't change, you will be swept away in that cataclysm. Some will change, many will not, and they will be swept away of their own choice. Because they just wanted to continue with the darkness that's in their hearts and minds. That's actually the message of the Quran, and I find that, to me, it's interesting. And when I read these stories, when I read these parables, I see a lot of our modern world in them. And yeah, it makes me a little concerned. I don't want to see people get swept away. I don't feel God does. He's not, chomping at the bit, seeing who's going to, be annihilated and who's not. Even the Quran says that God is most merciful, most compassionate, most forgiving. He is kind toward his creatures. He isn't an angry God, and this isn't what he wants. But it's our choice if that's the road that we want to go down. So Cataclysm, cyclical, not cyclical, coming soon. What do you guys think? Give me a shout out and let me know. Send me an email at nocturnalmagic@gmail.com. Find my podcast on YouTube and leave me a message. I'm always happy and curious to hear what the listening audience has to say. So as always, I appreciate you guys listening. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to listen to my ramblings, as I always say. Until next time, stay safe, be good to one another, and I'll see you next time on the Spirit Side.